Hi, Williza.
Hi, Cam.
Really great to have you on today.
Yes.
Hey, we've got you in today to talk about, to talk a little bit about what happens when only one partner manages the finances. So that seems to happen a little bit. So it often happens, when there's often one person in a relationship that is more interested in finances, or the other person thinks that they're not, or they're no good at it, and that sort of thing. And of course, we would always encourage both parties to engage. But we're here today to talk about that. So I guess what happens in your mind, what happens when one partner does manage all the finances and suddenly they're no longer there?
Well, the loss of a spouse is one of the most difficult experiences a person, can face. And beyond the emotional grief, there can be an overwhelming number of practical and financial matters that need immediate attention.
Yep.
And if you've never had much involvement before in the household finances, this can feel daunting during one of the most stressful times in your life.
I guess the challenge comes when life, takes that unexpected turn, doesn't it?
And there's another factor that often gets overlooked, and that is women tend to live a lot longer than men and are therefore likely to experience widowhood. And there are many women who have had less involvement in the finances during their marriage. So as a result, when their partner passes away, they're not only coping with their loss, but they're also suddenly expected to manage investments, understand pension income streams, communicate with Centrelink,
tax,
and deal with all these financial decisions that can affect their financial security.
And they have to do things, don't they? So, often we see people walk into office saying, I just don't even know where to start.
And honestly, that's completely understandable.
Yeah.
When someone's grieving, even simple tasks can feel overwhelming.
Yeah, that's right. So what's some of that hidden burden after death?
Well, many people assume that dealing with an estate simply involves, reading the will and distributing the assets.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, it's a lot more complicated than that. There's paperwork, there's institutions to notify, there's legal requirements, there are deadlines.
Yep.
And in many cases, there can be years of financial records, accounts and documents that an executor needs to identify and sort through.
Yeah, I think, look, I've even just had clients tell me that opening the filing cabinet or, logging into their late spouse's emails felt it's just almost impossible to do that emotionally, because that was always something that they did and that impacts that.
Of course. And, every account closure, every form and every signature can just be another reminder of that someone that they've lost.
Yeah.
And this is why planning ahead isn't just about money. It's about reducing stress, about making an already difficult period slightly easier to navigate, and ensuring the surviving partner feels supported rather than overwhelmed.
So in your mind, what needs to happen after someone passes away? So maybe we should talk about, the steps, what you have to do.
One of the first requirements is obtaining a death certificate. And at the same time, it's important to identify who actually has legal authority to act.
Yeah.
Many people are surprised to learn that an enduring power of attorney actually ceases immediately upon death. So in other words, the person who previously had authority to make decisions can no longer act. If there is a valid will, the executor named in the will generally become the person who's responsible for administering the estate. And if there isn't a will, the process becomes significantly more complicated.
One of this happens a bit. I think often clients get confused between I'm an executor they always get confused. I'm an executor or I'm a power of attorney and don't really understand what the two differences are. So, I see that all the time. So in the case that someone doesn't have a will, what happens?
Well, they need to apply to the court for letters of administration before they can even begin dealing with the many aspects of the estate. And that just adds additional time, complexity, and often legal costs. So once that authority has been established, there are numerous organisations that need to be contacted and notified. And these can include Centrelink, banks, Medicare, private health, the ATO, utility providers, and the list goes on.
And I guess dealing with those organisations, like, I mean, some of them are government organisations. It's not like it's fun. I mean, and these days you call Centrelink, you just call them to ask them about something. It takes you an hour to get through to speak to someone. And then there's certain forms that you need to have to sign, or, you know, the ATO is the same. You call the ATO, you're on the phone for half an hour. Medicare is the same. But even some of the banks, you know, you've got to go through their rigmarole to actually speak to someone to get the thing done that you need to get done. And then, you know, heaven forbid it's not signed properly, and or it's not, you know, like you didn't dot the I across the T, and, you know, there's no forgiving of that.
No, and to do this all while you're trying to grieve, it can feel impossible.
Yeah, that's right. So just thinking about what forms part of an estate, so this is dealing with the process of being an executor. Another area that often creates confusion, I think, is understanding what happens to various assets. So many people just assume wrongly, and again, we see this all the time when we're talking to people that are in our office alive, they assume wrongly that everything just passes through the will.
And that's not always the case.
No.
With jointly owned assets, so for example, a bank account owned in joint names, that automatically passes to the surviving owner.
Yeah.
Same with property. And superannuation often sits outside the estate and may be paid directly to the beneficiary, depending on the nomination and the trustee decision. You've got insurance policies as well. They may be paid directly to the beneficiaries. And also we've got discretionary trusts. They also require separate considerations and often don't automatically form part of the estate.
Yeah, that's that is all that is always misunderstood, I find. So the way I like to explain this is, you know, if you and I have a bank account, Williza, and something happens to me, my half of that bank account doesn't go to my family, it goes to you, right?
That's
it's
right.
as simple as that. Superannuation, you've got to either fill out binding nominations that are binding on the trustee. You have to consider who the trustees are, if it's a self-managed super fund. You have to consider whether there's reversionary beneficiaries. So all of these are terms that are probably actually really overwhelming for people who haven't really heard them before. You know, we've heard them for 20 plus years, so it's sort of second nature to us. But where these assets go can be not through an estate. You know, I've seen an estate in recent times where the estate, the net worth of the people that were impacted by this is around about $10 million. There's only $35,000 is going into the estate.
Is that right?
Yeah. The rest is all dealt with outside. So let's talk about wills.
Yes, one of the most surprising statistics is that more than half of Australians either don't have a will
Half.
or have one that may no longer reflect their wishes.
Oh, okay. So 1 in 2.
Yes.
All right. Interesting.
So many people believe they don't need one because they're married, and others may think creating one is too expensive.
Yeah. Look, the reality is that dying without a valid will and it is, you know, far more expensive and time consuming for the estate anyway, right?
So if someone dies without a will, state-based intestacy laws determine how the estate is distributed. So put simply, if you don't make the decisions yourself, the law will make them for you, and the outcome may not be what you really wanted.
Intended. Yeah, I always get the throwaway line is, oh, well, I'm not around to worry about it. How often do we hear that?
Yes.
It's just like, yeah, but like if you knew what's actually involved in sorting it out, if there is not a will, it's just you just wouldn't do it.
It's just so much additional stress for those you've left behind. And also there's significant complications, particularly in blended families, second relationships, or even situations where, you know, family circumstances and dynamics have changed.
Yeah. Well, and I think also too, even when there's a will that has been, you know, that exists, it's important to review it, right? Like it's not. And again, we see clients like this all the time. They say, "Oh, I've got a will. You know, it's pretty good. It's fine. It's pretty good." You look at it, you think, "Well, you made this will 20 plus years ago when your children, who are now adults, like 30-year-olds that are married with their own children were your children, were 5 or 10 years old, and like it's just completely irrelevant now. But also, if you get married, if you get divorced, if there's a death of a beneficiary, you enter a new relationship, all these things can change whether a will remains appropriate or not, and it's still valid. So,
That's right.
So from a record keeping perspective, Williza, one of the simplest yet most valuable steps is keeping records. So what's one thing someone listening can action today on keeping good records?
Well, that's to make sure both parties actually know where important information is located. And that means having a central location for key information, such as bank accounts, investments, superannuation, insurance, mortgage information. And one thing that often gets overlooked is digital passwords and access instructions. So if you're needing access to someone's email, maybe the bills go there or there's important information stored in there. That can just be impossible once they're gone.
Yes, and it's designed to be impossible because you don't want people breaking into your fancy password that you probably had since you were 25 years ago. Not that I have the same password for the last 25 years.
I hope not.
Well, not anymore.
But I guess having this information stored somewhere secure, it would just save countless hours and just reduce stress and uncertainty for the surviving spouse. And, we've seen situations where beneficiaries spend months simply trying to identify what assets existed in the first place at a time when all they want to do is just grieve. Yeah,
it's a challenge. Yeah. I think also too, like they're generally clients that have come to us once this has happened and they're the next generation. But, that's one of the reasons why working with a financial advisor, we kind of make sure that the assets go where you want them to go. We will make sure that we know all the list of assets. We have all the detail, and that's part of the reason why our clients that are heading towards the latter part of their lives work with us. Is because there's accountability and all that, and there's the record keeping is all done for them, right? So, Williza, I know you work in aged care a bit. So, what about families with parents or partners in aged care? Is there additional considerations?
Absolutely. So, if you've got a parent in aged care and they pass away, there are specific processes around the accommodation deposit, also known as a RAD.
Yep.
And one area that can catch families by surprise is where a child has helped fund a parent's RAD. So, they've helped fund the accommodation payment. So, for example, Tom might lend mum $200,000 to help pay for the accommodation deposit. But when mum passes away, that deposit is actually refunded to her estate and distributed as per mum's will, not to Tom. So that may not actually reflect what was originally intended.
Yeah, and flow back. And I guess when those decisions are being made too, it's easy to overlook that sort of thing because, your key focus at that point in time is to make sure mum's okay, right? So I need to get mum into aged care. It's an incredibly emotional time. Things get forgotten. So it's not documented properly.
So situations like that just highlight why proper planning and advice is so important.
Yeah, exactly. So if someone listening today, say recently lost a partner, maybe they find themselves responsible for managing the finances, what would you say to them?
I think firstly it's important to recognise that you're not expected to know everything straight away.
Yeah.
Many people feel pressure to suddenly become financial experts, at a time when they're also dealing with grief, and that's a lot for anyone to take on. One of the biggest challenges is simply knowing where to start. And, people often find themselves asking questions like, will I be okay? What happens to my income? Do I need to sell anything?
Yeah.
Can I stay in my home?
Can I access money in the bank accounts?
Yep, and these are all very normal concerns.
Yes.
So if all of this sounds overwhelming, remember you don't need to have all the answers straight away. Sometimes the most important first step is just simply picking up the phone and asking for help.
And I think also too, one of the most valuable conversations couples can have is about being prepared and encouraging, each of your each of you to understand what are the assets. So what is my financial position? Our financial position. Where are the bank accounts? What are the passwords? How do I operate the accounts? Where's our income come from? Is it partially age pension? Is it from these investments? Where does the income get paid to? How does the investment strategy work? Making sure. I mean, look, from our perspective, we always will engage both members of the couple. But if you happen to listen to this and you're not one of our clients, be engaged in the investment strategy. So, if something happens, who do you contact? All of these things are so important.
And these conversations, they aren't about expecting the worst. It's about ensuring, that if life changes unexpectedly, the other person, has the confidence and support that they need.
Yeah, spot on. Look, I think it's always an uncomfortable topic, death, and also too, I think aged care and finances. Like, you go to a dinner party, you're not supposed to bring up any of those things, right? But importantly, when you're getting to a point in your life where you're relying on your finances to do something for you, whether it's retirement or aged care or at any point in life, being engaged in your finances and understanding how it works, and even if it's a cursory understanding, because a lot of people also do find finances overwhelming, right? So, which is probably why we have jobs and a business. So being prepared for what could happen, it just means that you should just be engaged.
Exactly.
Just be engaged in it. Yeah.
Exactly. And if you're listening today and realise, that there is one person in the household that manages everything, just consider this a gentle prompt just to start the conversation.
That's right.
And if you have recently lost a partner and feel overwhelmed by everything, just know there is help available, and just know you're not at it alone.
No, that's right. Yeah, they're all relevant and very good points. Williza, thanks so much.
Thanks, Ken.
That was excellent. Appreciate you making the time before your holiday. I jammed it in here, so I'm sorry about that. But thank you. That was excellent, and there's some really good advice in that for everyone. So thank you.
Anytime. Thank you.
See you later, everyone.